Heritage Talks is very simply, if you look around our museum here or you go over to the Fair Museum, you'll see tons and tons of memorabilia, over 3,000 pieces of memorabilia in the Fair Museum across the street, probably twice that many here. You can have pictures that depict the stories. You can have a super library, as we do, to back up those stories in the pictures. But what Heritage Talks is actually getting the pioneers that lived that time period to tell those stories in their own words, and then that kind of brings the whole circle back to where it needs to be. Heritage Talks is very, very important. The Fresno County Historical Museum represents all of Fresno, the good, the bad, the ugly. It gives Fresno a real, true voice. It's a voice of the past, the present, and it documents the history for the future. The determination came in a direction of a lot of different directions. Number one, key individual relationships with special people in this community that really care about preserving and protecting our past. Also, key partnerships that we developed with the fire department, the police department, Hall of Fame, Athletic Hall of Fame, the Japanese community, also with the Historical Society. So we developed some great partnerships with groups that were very, very important. We worked with a lot of people that share a common goal to preserve and protect our collective treasures of Fresno County. The museum, to me personally, is a passion to preserve and protect and exhibit at a very, very high level of professionalism to achieve ultimate success as a gift back to the community. In the past, I've been involved with a number of fairs, and this is my 32nd year in the fair business as the CEO. And you can go to a lot of different communities, and you won't meet or be around the type of people that are gathered here in Fresno. When you talk about Fresno versus those other fairs, they were great fairs and we accomplished a lot, but this was the only fair that I've been able to come to and win 3 Merrill Awards, which are national recognition. And like my maintenance supervisor told me, you did a great job at those other fairs, but you had to come to Fresno to win 3 Merrill Awards. And I think that sizes it up pretty good. In viewing the people that came through the museum the first day, their first experience, for myself, it was a tremendous amount of relief and a feeling of accomplishment. But at the same time, our customers, how they reacted meant the most to me, and they were in awe. They didn't expect to see the depth or the quality of exhibits that we have right here in our new museum and the Fair Museum that they might have not have seen last year or the year before either. So on both sides of the coin, it was very rewarding. Again, a big sigh of relief. It was nip and tuck to even get the building open, but we did get it open, and I think our customers were very satisfied, and I think they went home and told their neighbors, you got to go see that exhibit, because our numbers grew and grew. Each and every day, we had to add additional security and add additional curators to make sure we took care of the crowd. So it was a win-win. It was a good day. Very simple. Fresno County, what I love the most about it is its diversification. I think we're the most diversified fair in the United States, not just California, but the United States. We're the only fair that you could go in the livestock barn, and you'll see wash your hands in 6 different languages. We have over 54 cultures right here in Fresno that are represented at our fair. So again, diversification in the people.
The Chinatown artifacts were going to be destroyed that was left there. And so I knew that there was a lot of things that should be saved. And after talking to Dan Pollard, who was a curator out at Kearney Park, we decided that it should be saved. So I called in some guys to help, and we finally ended up with Ernest Sam, who had the keys to all of the buildings that were there. So we had the keys, and we opened up these buildings that were vacant and went down into their basements and then also into the underground tunnels that went from street to street, under the alleys and from store to store. And first wanted to survey and see what there was there. And we were amazed at the many, many things that we saw. And they were brought out and they were taken out to a warehouse at Kearney Park, and they were placed in the vaults out there for safekeeping. The guys that helped me was Dan Pollard, Bob Leonard, Irvin Cordy, and myself. In the tunnels, I saw boarded and bricked up places. We breached them, went on through. We found their opium facilities. We found the Chinese lottery printing press and the lottery tickets, and also the vest that had all the little pockets where they could go across someplace else when it was all outlawed, and they'd cover them up and they'd sell their tickets. We also found a large box, and it had numerous items that they used for wars. The Tongs and the Wongs, they had their wars in San Francisco, but they also had some problems in Fresno, and the families would settle their own disputes, and these were weapons. And then they also were used as to carry in parades, like military would carry a bayoneted rifle or something else. And each one of these cluster of weapons, the javelins, the spears, and various they were all handmade, and they were identified by different colors of cloth. This family would be yellow, that one would be blue, green, red, black. And so if my family was going to go to war with your family, we would go draw out our weapons, and then we knew whose is whose. Yes, I was a member of the Fresno Fire Department, and I was stationed about 5 blocks away from the fire scene. It was in the early evening. We responded, and this beautiful old home was heavily involved with fire, and we put the fire out after some hard work and a period of time. And the things that we had to remove out of that building, it was a 2-story building, had a full basement underneath. The underneath basement was his dark room and all of his equipment and the things pertaining to his business. So this had to be removed because of rekindle. That means it would start again. It was brought out and placed in open ground outside, and about 11 o'clock, the Chief Lane said, "Pick them all up, boys, we're going in, but we're going to be back before morning because I'm sure this is going to rekindle." I volunteered to stand fire guard. So I spent the night there. We hooked up our hoses to the fire hydrants, and I got some big tubs of water, set up some lights, and here was a mountain of these films, and it just broke my heart. So I'm going to be there all night, so I started saving and trying to salvage all I could. And when the chief came the next morning with the relieving crew, he told me that he could not get anyone from the Laval family to come down and take this, so he said, I've called the city corporation yard. They're going to send a dump truck and a skip loader, and we're going to take it all out to the landfill. And I begged him not to. I said, I've saved this much, and it's irreplaceable. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, give me 24 hours, and I will call in some guys. We'll pick this stuff, every bit of it up that we can, and we'll save it, and we'll take it out and put it in a warehouse for safekeeping. And so the same guys that I usually called on to help did come, and we took it out. Dan Pollard had keys to the warehouse, and so we put it in there, and years later, the Laval family was able to go out and get this stuff, and they salvaged a lot more, and it's just absolute treasures. So about 10 years ago, they had a deal here in town, and the granddaughter, Elizabeth, called me up on the stage, and she presented me a picture of his that had this 1925 aerial ladder and some guys in the front, and it's very nicely done, and she gave it to me in recognition of thank you for what we did to save her grandfather's collection. I looked at it and I said, well, yes, this is Tom Baird. I didn't work with him, he was the chief, but over here is Bill Miller and Bill Donaghy, and they were young men in this picture, but they were old men when I worked with them later on in years, so at least I did know who those people were, and she was kind of shocked. I recognized we knew who the owner of the house was. We knew what he did. Here was his lifetime's collection, and once it's gone forever. And so at least if we put it out in this warehouse for safekeeping, that was payment enough that we knew that someday it would still be available for people to see and enjoy. It was quite rewarding, and you almost get emotional. And several books has been printed since then. The Laval family put out a couple of books, and so did Mr. Edwin M. Eaton, called Vintage Fresno. And so you look through these things, and here are those prints and pictures that would have been out at the landfill, but now they're safe. And I really approve of that. It's a labor of love. I like old things, and it's something that I've always enjoyed. I like to take an old car that is maybe should be out crushed up and going off to some country to make Toyotas or something and bring back. But if we can take those, whether it's horse-drawn or hand-drawn or motor-driven, and bring it back and make it look like it did when it came from the factory, everything is correct on it. You're preserving, and it's a labor of love. I really do enjoy doing it, and I enjoy seeing work that other people in the club and other hobbies, that they too enjoy it. My fondest memory, I think, is the fact that I was born in Fresno County, and been here all my life except when I was in the military, but this was still home. I'm proud to say that I'm a native of Fresno. I never intend to leave Fresno, and there's a lot of wonderful things and people.
Actually, I went up to Purdue because my family, my grandfather, my two uncles, my father, my mother, all were graduates of Purdue. And Purdue had a very flexible and good engineering background. Fact is, people don't remember this, but all of the earliest astronauts came out of the Purdue Aeronautical School. I got an education because when I thought about my parents started a business in 1945 at the end of the war with absolutely borrowed money, and as I say, we never even owned a car. And they started a very small scale. In fact, the oil companies needed people after the war. There was a lot of things to be done, a lot of opportunity. So I got to work in the crews as a welder's helper, timekeeper, anything, as long as it wasn't too heavy to get me hurt in the beginning until I got a little older. So I'd had a lot of experience working summers and vacation times. And during that time, I got to thinking what I wanted to do with my life. And I knew I wasn't brilliant enough to invent something patentable, and I wasn't going to be lucky enough, like Mr. Berry was in this region, to hit a gold mine or an oil well. So I thought that, well, you know, if I got an education, how long would it be till I got enough opportunity to do something on my own? And my parents had started in a very good time, so reluctantly I decided, well, I'll go and get an education and come back and work for my dad. And that was the plan when I went off to Purdue, to get an education, and I got one partly engineering and partly business, which is now called construction management, but that was before there ever was such a thing. And that was what I did. And then I also took Naval ROTC. So one of my instructors had been in the Civil Engineering Corps of the Navy, and he recommended that I apply for that instead of being a line officer. And because of my background, they did assign me to supervise construction work as assistant resident officer in charge of construction at the Naval Powder Factory south of Washington, D.C., right across from Quantico. And I spent 2 years there building all kinds of things, wonderful experience, administering contracts. And the last time I was there, they kept me over for a week or so, which I didn't realize they could do, but it was to have the dedication of the Dr. Robert H. Goddard power plant, which was named after Dr. Goddard, the father of rocketry. And Esther Goddard and Willie Lay and Winifred Braun, all names out of history. And within 6 months of that, I didn't realize the significance. Sputnik and Munting went up and we were in the space age. Well, I came home, got married, went to Stockton for 6 months as a junior engineer, and my dad got involved through Purdue and his experience with taking the knowledge and supervising a partnership to build the first pipeline to carry oil in Europe from Wilhelmshaven to Cologne for BP and Shell, which they had a partnership called Nordwest Ölleitung in German, Northwest Oil. And my dad wanted me to go with him to double check costs, help him bring materials and supplies over, and just be there sort of a backup to him. They're working with foreign companies, big companies, compared to our little small company. And I stayed there for almost a year, and my uncle was managing, my Uncle Larry, who had been in World War II in the 1st Cavalry, was heading up a new operation in Visalia. Another uncle who was a chemical engineer started an office in Fresno right after, by 46. So, but my Uncle Larry was watching over things with my mother while we were in Europe. And Larry wrote to my dad, cabled to him, whatever, communicated that he needed me to come home because he couldn't get anybody to go over to the coast to Vandenberg. And we just had to be there because everything was going to break loose. Well, Santa Maria grew from 15,000 to 45,000 in about 3 to 4 years. And Vandenberg did move through the Atlas, the Thor, the Minuteman 1, 2, and 3, and the Titan 1, 2, and eventually the program ended in '64 with the Titan 3 was canceled by Lyndon Johnson. So, but I got a huge amount of experience with my uncle flying over and helping me, and eventually I gained more confidence and was able to do more and more on my own. But again, a very quick and tremendous learning experience. Toward the end of it, I worked for a company building Vandenberg Village, Utah Construction, and later on went down and opened up with Westlake Village with Daniel Ludwig, the big shipping magnate. So I got experience watching large planned communities being built, something that I thought about later on and still do. But at that end, my dad wanted me to, I had 2 children by that time, and my dad, we had to decide where our future office was going to be. As the company grew, there's no way that Avenel could attract the kind of people we needed. And so the thought was either Bakersfield or Fresno, and ultimately it was decided that Fresno was more the center of where our construction work would be. And I came over here and started working in '64, going home on weekends because it took me over a year to find somebody that I could get rid of the house at a 25% loss, which was a great lesson. You don't always make money selling homes, especially if you've had a bust. And on my first weekend here, my father was killed in an accident on his cattle ranch up at Parkfield. So I was pulled off of that job and worked under my Uncle Larry, supervising work around the company and learning management. 7 years later, in 1972, he turned the company over to me and said, I want to go back and be your general superintendent. So it was no long-term idea that I came to work to run a company. I came to work to learn the business and prove myself, and eventually spent the rest of my life building it, and that's what I've done. I'm old enough that I remember moving to Avenel in 1940 before the war, the Second World War. And I saw the people that came out of Oklahoma, Arkansas, North Texas, Missouri. We called them Okies and Arkies. They call them just Okies today in history books, but I don't know why, but we called them Okies and Arkies. And they were bussed up to our school, a lot of them from Devil's Den. And they were very poor, uneducated, but they had the guts to come out here to make a new life. And most of that generation all moved up successfully, as difficult as it was for them, and how badly they were treated in much of the area when they first got here. So that was the beginning of my understanding of everybody isn't lucky, and there's people that make it and people that have a struggle. So I guess when I moved to Fresno, I began to see the things that great wealth and great poverty side by side. Probably one of the richest places in the world agriculturally, the greatest, very special area, the things that make it that. But the labor that has come here to do well in recent generations, most of it Latin Americans, have not done that well. And I guess when I first saw Fresno I believe it was about 1948 or 49, playing football at San Joaquin Memorial, I remember looking across through the north goalposts and seeing nothing but open fields between there and Clovis. Fruit Avenue had been developed to the northwest and the old fig garden, but most of Fresno has actually been developed in my lifetime. More than 2/3 to 3/4. So it's grown tremendously. But as I was here and living here, I began to be concerned and involved in educational things in elementary school, later the Citizens Resource Committee in State College when Black Studies in La Raza were the thing. Jim Hendricks and Jim Aldridge and James Hallowell and I were all on that committee. We're all old men now, but we were in our young 30s at that time. We saw the kind of differential you have here, and a few years later, coined a term that called the Central Valley from Bakersfield to Stockton, Central Valley, Appalachia. And Dan Whitehurst, when he was mayor in the early 80s, coined the term Tale of Two Cities after Dickens, which made point of the fact that a third of Fresno to the north and the east, and primarily, was well-to-do, and we had lots of poverty and people left behind in a city that was not so prosperous. And in my lifetime, I've seen mile by mile, block by block, from McKinley to Shields, from Shields to Shaw, from Shaw and further north, decay behind, and the people that could, even in the minorities that could be the role models, they wanted the same things the rest of us wanted: a safe neighborhood, clean, and with good schools. And so that's the reason for what's happened in Fresno. And that's not been something that's made me real happy. And I know that when that happens, you don't have the best of what you'd hope for in a community. And I haven't really seen it change. And that's sad too. Because Sanford Research Institute, back in the late 70s, was commissioned with a report that told us that in addition to agriculture, which would be our key creator of jobs and wealth long term, was good, but we needed to put some clean other jobs here as well. And just as the community here, as the Bay Area, we used to ship up to San Jose our product to be frozen or canned. But as that area became Silicon Valley, became very expensive, it was too expensive to do that work there. And so people that were smart started vertical integration down here and brought the product back home. That was good. A lot of the most successful people not only grow the crop, market it, process it, and distribute it. And they've really made a success. And I think most people know a lot of who they are. But I figured that as Silicon Valley developed and became so expensive, I figured the research, the universities, the business behind it, the legal, the financing could stay there. But the light manufacturing should be coming down to the valley, where we had low-cost housing, plenty of labor, and very frankly, the recommendation of the Sanford Research Institute, SRI, was that we had plenty of small 100, 150 acres and in industrial parks. We'd been developing some of them with a partnership with Bob Klein Sr., Helen Spate's past husband. When we'd get to a certain point, they were all hemmed in and we couldn't go any further. So SRI had told us we should do 1,000 acres or more of industrial parks so that we could bring business and track business. Unfortunately, we've talked a lot and never done a thing with any of that. And the net result is, even with the Economic Development Corporation, which we formed in 1981, business councils and other things, city council, board of supervisors, the thinking has been just dealing with the short term and dealing with the problem now and never having any planning for the future. And I know I've tried my best to get a major industrial park here, and unfortunately, the last 3 mayors of Fresno felt other things were more important, and even though they promised to do it, all 3 of them, none of it got done. And we're still with a place that, very honestly, big business, and we're big enough today that to make a real change, small little things starting up don't make the real difference. And all the good-hearted people in this community, and there are wonderful people in this community with good hearts, but that doesn't get anything done, unfortunately, on a large enough scale to change the macroeconomics of the area. And unless you change the macroeconomics to create good jobs, you're not going to end up creating opportunity for upward mobility, upward chances for the people left down at lower levels. And I don't need to amplify on that. Anybody that's lived here knows what we're talking about. The drugs and the crime and the broken homes and the kids that don't have an opportunity for the future. So the honest truth is that businesses that even look at Fresno know that the time to get a piece of land, get it zoned properly, get the proper infrastructure close by, and do it, they haven't got that time to wait. So we're not on the map. Other cities up and down the valley, from Bakersfield to Larry Visalia in the north also, have done a better job of that than we have. Clovis is the only one that's really done a good job. And they made it possible for me to do something to prove that you could have light industry here, and that was Pelco back about 25 years ago. And without any government programs, just through taking the people here in this community, we could train them, and we built from 60 to 2,600 employees with worldwide sales. It's gone now because the aging management wanted to cash in. I couldn't stop it very well without management. It takes capital and management both. So it was sold to a foreign company, and now there's less than 300 employees out there. That again breaks my heart. I wanted to see culture encouraged in this community, but unfortunately, and the A to Z was an idea that I brought here to copy what they'd done in Denver and what Dick Lugar, fraternity brother of mine from Purdue University, did in Indianapolis when he turned it around as mayor. Richard Lugar, who eventually became a senator, as you know. So we tried the A to Z, but had to do the Measure C instead that year, and that's been important toward helping Fresno and guaranteeing that downtown won't be lost forever. But without culture in this community, without museums, without something to focus on that, Oklahoma City, Santa Fe, the Choctaw Nation south of Oklahoma City, many places have great museums that show the culture and the development of their community. And this community with some 80 different ethnic groups that have come here, they're all for farming and to seek a better future. A lot of it, we have multiple languages. The water and the snowpack in the mountains, the fact that we don't have a lot of rain in the summer and mildew, great topsoil, it's created something very special. And I think if we had the foresight to build those things and make them here, it would help people understand what we need to do better and help us maybe to do the things that would make the city we want and make downtown the area people will want to come back to. My real role model and the greatest man that I know of this community was Leon Peters. Other men that were role models that I admired and certainly were leaders of their time were Lou Eaton and Chuck Bonner, and may have left somebody out, but those were people that I knew when I was a young man and looked up to. But Leon Peters was the epitome of all that, because he did everything you could think of to be a leader. He was caring enough that he gave greatly financially and still does to his family, the community, although he's gone. He gave of his leadership in so many ways. And I remember going upstairs in his business south of town here, up a flight of stairs, a little old building, and walking down the hall to a very modest office. And the man was a humble man.
To be a businessman in Fresno County over the past years is, I've seen a tremendous increase in the regulations. Government regulations have just totally increased and caused so much more expense to do business. And I would say that's the main thing that has happened that would cause more difficulties in doing business here. I think probably at the beginning, at the outset, I was asked to chair a drive for building a stadium, LaMonica Stadium at Clovis High School. And I got such a kick out of that, at how people respond if you explain the need and how the plan is going to work and when it's going to happen and all that. And so I guess that gave me the motivation when I was asked to do the next project. And as you go along, if you do a good job, you get asked to do other things, I guess. The thing that drives me is that I live here, and I want to leave something for my kids. And they're, of course, in their mid-50s now. I still call them kids, but I suppose my grandkids are coming along, and I just want to leave this to be a better place. I think anybody that I associate with in these projects, and boards, and what have you, I would say that they would all agree to that. The most important, I think, and significant project is the construction of Valley Children's Hospital up in Madera County. I was asked when I was at Producers to chair a public relations committee for the hospital when it was over on Millbrook and I think Shields and Millbrook. And I worked at that for a little while, and then came along plans. J.D. Northway, Dr. Northway, asked me if I would sit on the board. So I took that as a positive, and to sit on the board and chair the Public Relations Committee is more accurate. And so when the time came to build a hospital, I was very much involved in that. When Dr. Northway asked me to do that, it was a $200 million project to build Children's Hospital. Well, we were able to get some money from various sources, and we got $55 million from the state because Senator Ken Maddy was up there, and his associate I knew as a personal friend, and we got Senator Maddy to carry a bill, and it said that any rural children's hospital that started construction by the end of the year, the state would fund the first $55 million. Guess how many rural children's hospitals there are? And so that was really the thing that worked. And then a fellow named Richard Gunner, who was a developer, I guess Richard's still around, he was younger, donated 50 acres in Madera County, and everybody in Fresno was up in arms about that. It's a children's hospital for Fresno. We said, no, it says Valley Children's Hospital. And so we were delighted to accept the gift, and then to raise the money, because I believe that Mr. Gunner thought there was going to be development coming right around that hospital once you put it up there. A beautiful, big, multi-story hospital. Nothing happened. It hasn't happened yet. And so the gift was wonderful, and that made it all possible. So we had a lot of fun raising that money. A couple of ladies who were widows living in Oakland, I believe. One was Mrs. Craycroft for the old Craycroft Brick Company in Fresno, and she'd moved up there, and she heard about it, and I got a call from her donating $1 million. And then she said, "Oh, I have a friend who would like to be involved in the project, and she'll give you $1 million." Whoa, out of the blue. And then there's a big farming company called Paramount Farms down in Bakersfield. Out of the blue comes $10 million. I called the fellow and said, "You know, what are you doing? Thank you, but I'm really surprised that you're doing this." And he said, "Well, you know, it is Valley Children's Hospital, and we don't have one down here." So it was outstanding. The money it didn't grow on trees, but it really worked out well. More people. I would think the population increase and the overrunning of agricultural land by subdivisions, particularly on the east side. There are subdivisions clear out to Temperance Avenue east of Clovis. I never thought I'd see that. So I would say the population, the increase in development would be the biggest changes. I think this little old Okie boy who was born in Conawa, Oklahoma, came out here like the Grapes of Wrath story, figuring, do good to get a job and act halfway decent for my folks. I was humbled by it because of that background, and yet here I was getting it. I knew Leon Peters from Valley Foundry, if you may have met Leon. He was only about a good maybe 5 foot even, if that. And I remember when I was installed in Rotary, and we met at the old Hilton Hotel then, the dais that he stood behind hit him about right here, and we had to get him a box. And he stood on the box to conduct the meetings. But he was a grand fella, and he was. Back in the time when I was raising money I was the weapon for Producers Cotton Oil Company, which sadly no longer exists. My boss told me that I was to be the local weapon, and I was the PR manager. And we would lean on somebody who had given something that you knew they had, like Dan Martin from Martin Oil. If I could say Dan Martin has given $50,000 for this project, it made a big difference. People would, and so the idea was, Leon, give me the money, thank you for this, $75,000, whatever, but I need to say you did it when I call Dan Martin. And Leon said, "Well, that's not really my style. I don't appreciate doing that, but if it'll help, okay." So then I called Dan Martin and say, "Leon gave me $75,000. What'll you do?" And of course he said, "Well, I can do 80, or he'd up it a little bit." Same thing happened. Several other donors that we had. Electric Motor Shop, Frank Caglia was another low-key giver, and he was in that triumvirate, what you might call it, and that's the way it worked. And we were able to raise a lot of money for different projects, whatever I was asked to do. And a lot of it came about through Rotary, knowing these folks in the Rotary Club, which was at one point before the taxes changed. When I was president in 80, 81, we had 418 members, all men. The women were not allowed in the club at that point, and then that came along when Judge Bob Oliver was the president. We teased him about it, that he'd brought these gals in. And we laughed because we only lost one member. The fellow, I'll give you his name, but he dropped out because he didn't want those women in a Rotary Club. And we laughed about that one. Well, I have two boys. And between the Lord and me, I'd say they are my greatest contribution. Beyond a family, it's pretty obvious it was Children's Hospital. We're really a metropolitan area. Folks think we're just a little cow town with agriculture, grapes and raisins, and that's about it. Some figs left, what the subdivisions haven't taken, but yeah, they'd be surprised at the cosmopolitan atmosphere of Fresno.
My drive to preserve local history was learned and appreciated while working with my father at the office as I got a little bit older, and seeing his fervor for the care and love of historic treasures here in the community. And coming from a very tiny, poor village in Mosquito, everything and anything was special and important to him. So it gave Dad great joy to preserve things and to be able to someday see, another use for it or appreciation for it. Say I absorbed it by osmosis, by being around it, because I started working with my dad at the company from the age of 12 and a half, answering the telephone. And I was blessed in that I was able to meet a lot of the local people of the community that would pass through the office, like Leon Peters and Mr. Eaton and folks like that also valued and treasured the histories of Fresno County. So I had an early exposure and I guess you'd say an indoctrination into caring for the community. And of course, my father's love of the community and how good it's been to our family with the businesses, it was just a natural thing for him to want to give back to the community and take care of it, so. It's important to preserve our history, at least to me, so it can be shared with my children, my grandchildren, and the future generations. The complexion and structure of our communities are rapidly changing. Witness the high-speed rail transformation downtown and in the area of Chinatown. All those old buildings and history, roads and familiar landmarks are gone. They're being taken out. Without our historic buildings and monuments, it's impossible to share my memories and others of the places and things from the past without their existence, except in photographs. That's all that's there. You can talk about them, but they're no longer in existence. So if we don't somehow preserve some of that, the next generation needs to know and learn and appreciate the legacies that we do have that is being left to them. I would have to say it would be the boy with the boot, because he graced our conference room for many, many years. And on occasion, he was asked to be taken out and put on display. And it was always a heart's desire that he, and with my dad's also for having preserved it, is that the community could appreciate it, because it used to have such a prominent place in Courthouse Park. And I vividly remember going there with my dad and my mother on Sunday afternoons for the Fresno Community Band would play in a little pavilion there in the park, and it was sponsored by Borden's Dairy. because I remember the Elsie the Cow emblem that used to be on the front of the bandstand. So, yeah, so he brings a lot of warm, wonderful memories to mind, and I think he's pretty special. Growing up in the country with 40 acres to roam with my 3 brothers and target practice with them. Memories of my brother Dick milking our cow that was the milk on our table every day. Her name was Betsy, by the way. She looked like the cow from Borden's Dairy. Riding our horse Cindy through the pastures. Playing in the mud and swimming in the irrigation ditches. Catching tadpoles and picking blackberries along the ditch bank. New toys and the possibility of finding money every Thursday out of the loads that came in from Salvation Army at the landfill. We used to scramble over there and go through the loads and bring a bunch of stuff home on the back porch, and the next day my mother would have my grandfather haul it all off. So we'd wait till the next Thursday when the next load came in. So eating fresh tomatoes out of the crop that was planted next to our house, or picking cotton with the cotton pickers that would come through with their long bags. We'd raid my mother's pillowcase cabinet, and we'd go out there and pick cotton with the people that were picking cotton, and just for the heck of it. And then when they would leave, we would get in the big bins and jump up and down in the cotton and have fun. So, what else the waving to the crop dusters, the guy, the pilot in the plane when he'd fly over the house. Being lulled to sleep at night with the water flowing in the canal over the turnstiles, and especially the smell of fresh cut alfalfa. That to me, whenever I'm traveling through the west side of Fresno and I get a whiff of fresh cut alfalfa, that takes me back to many years ago, right. I have to say, growing up out in the country was truly, for us, like a real Huck Finn fairy tale. It was fun. I recall long drives out to Herndon and Fresno Street when I was a little girl to go visit my Uncle Lou, who managed a nursery there on the southeast corner of Herndon and Fresno Street. Back in the day, when I was young and we'd visit out there was nothing for miles around, and Herndon was just a 2-lane street. Just close your eyes now and imagine what's out there today. The other thing that I think about is the revitalization of downtown Fresno and what's taking place on Fulton Street. That's another big change that, and I might add, a very welcome change. I'm happy to see that happening. I think one of the things that the people would be very surprised to learn about Fresno County is that it is the major producing county of food for the world just in our area, the major production of food that is processed through this county and distributed throughout the world. The other thing I think they would be surprised at is the number of different ethnic groups that live just in Fresno County. There's over 54 different ethnic groups from around the world that lives here. And the other thing I think that they would be very surprised, and a lot of people don't give thought to, is that we are surrounded by 3 of the most beautiful national parks in the world. So I think those are 3 things. And I think PBS is doing a great job of the National Parks program, educating people about that today. Fresno County is my home because my large family and our businesses are here. There's great educational opportunities. Many cultural arts amenities are offered here, as well as the many wonderful friends, employees, customers, and vendors who have made it possible for us and our family to create the legacy of taking care of Fresno's treasures. So this is home.
My name is Dale Ikeda. I Was born and raised in Clovis in Fresno County. I attended Clovis schools, went to Stanford University, and then received my law degree from the University of California at Davis. I returned to Fresno County because this is my home, where my roots are. I have family and friends here, and this is a wonderful place to raise a family. It's also very affordable. I married my wife, Deborah. We had 2 children. They attended schools in Clovis Unified School District, and we've been very happy here. My wife, Deborah, has been employed by State Center Community College District, first at Fresno City College as head of the counseling department, and most recently is the first president of Clovis Community College at Willowan International, near where I grew up. There's been a lot of growth and development in the county. We have a very diverse ethnic community, and we have seen a lot of changes. I mentioned that I grew up in Clovis. Actually, that was 6 miles north of Clovis in the county, and it was all agricultural at the time. Now, Clovis Community College, where my wife works, and Clovis North High School are located where we used to play and swim in the canal. So there have been a lot of changes in regard to growth and development in that area. Well, there's been a lot of increase in the population and the challenges that come with that. With development also comes some challenges that have impacted our air quality. We have some of the worst air in the country here, and water quantity and quality has become a major challenge going forward. The Fresno Assembly Center Memorial was a joint project between the Japanese American Citizens League and the fair, with a lot of help from different organizations and individuals. It's located just inside the Chance Avenue entrance in the front of the Commerce Building. It's a plaza area outside. The focal point is interpretive wall, which has a number of storyboards telling the story of Japanese American internment during the early part of World War II. Between May and October 1942, over 5,400 Americans of Japanese ancestry were interned at the fair. And so we tell some of the local stories, but we also tell the broader story about the internment of over 120,000 Americans of Japanese ancestry held by their own government for nearly 3 years during World War II, pursuant to President Roosevelt's Executive Order number 9066. In addition to the storyboards mounted on the interpretive wall are bronze plaques with the names of those who were interned here, so people can see and remember individuals they know who were actually at the fair. One of the features I like the most is we have donor bricks surrounding the memorial, and it has the names of individuals and organizations that have supported the project. And it's not just Japanese American names, but from throughout the community. I like to think of it as a way to show that the whole community is embracing this project as it has embraced the Japanese American community as well. One of the main goals of the project is to teach a lesson in history. We want to make sure that we never repeat the mistakes of the past, and that all people be treated fairly and justly, even in times of war and national distress. The Japanese American community is also honored to be part of the Fresno County Historical Museum located here at the fair. Our particular project is entitled Japanese Americans in the San Joaquin Valley, and we have a number of storyboards that talk about, for example, the Nisei veterans who fought in World War II and their outstanding service record. We have a section on Fresno's Japantown, where many Japanese American businesses were located. We have a section on agriculture, on sports, some of our sports heroes and from baseball, football, judo, and also a section on the public servants of Japanese ancestry who have served our community so well. Some of my favorite memories of Fresno County include my time in school. I attended Clovis Unified School District schools, including Dry Creek Elementary School and Clovis High School. Growing up, we're all treated the same. It didn't matter what your race was, it didn't matter how much your parents made or what kind of house you lived in. And that was at least my impression growing up, that we really enjoyed each other for who we were and what we brought to the table. Growing up on the family fig farm, I learned a number of things, some of them enjoyable, some more laborious, picking figs starting at least the age of 8, if not sooner, with my grandmother, and working with my brothers, caprifying figs, doing all sorts of things. But I learned a lot about work ethics and getting the job done, getting it done right, and also about family responsibilities, that we all need to support each other within the family to get the job done and to have a livelihood. In a way, that was part of my motivation to get a good education and pursue my career path. I know that my parents wanted a better life for me than they had, and that was part of our upbringing. I guess I'd have to say the person who has impacted me the most has been my father. He was very community-minded. I know that he served on the Clovis Veterans Memorial District Board of Trustees for many years, I think from about 1957 to 1974. That was an elected position, and to my knowledge, he was the first Asian American elected to public office in Fresno County. He was very involved in starting the Judo Club and supporting the Japanese American Citizens League and our local community organization. Even though he didn't have a lot of money in the bank, his leadership was for the community, and I would say likewise his brother, my uncle, Fumio, who went by Ike Ikeda, along those same lines, did a lot to model for the kids how they should be, how they should work, and how they should give back to the community.
In the beginning, Grandpa came here in the late 1800s or the early 1900s. He arrived in California as an immigrant from Armenia. They couldn't speak the language. Nobody liked them. There was lots of prejudices that time. And they succeeded. They lived on a farm. They were always farmers. My grandmother died at an early age, and Grandpa raised his kids by himself, and they pulled themselves up by the bootstraps, and they were able to, citizens, integrate into the society and assimilate into society, and that's where we are today. And my uncle started the foundation, wanted to go to college after he graduated from Fowler High School, Fowler High School into Magnolia Grammar School. And we didn't have any money. There was no money, so they were denied. My uncle was denied a college education, as were his siblings. And so my uncle went to work at Valley Foundry at that time. He eventually bought it, and the rest is history. He did real well for himself. And so the big thing was to give back to the area that was always so good to us. We started off with nothing, and where we ended up. So the basis of our philanthropic things, natural health care, that's a prime example, and education, and there's a lot of other things that we deal with. In fact, there's over 50 of them, but they're basically around education, the health care, and there's a lot of other things too. So what we're trying to do is to make this area here good for everybody. It doesn't matter who you are or what there is, everybody is on an even playing field, and we're trying to make this a better field for everybody. I've always said that I was very, very fortunate that he was my uncle and that I had somebody to talk to. I had a lot of not problems, but every time I had a problem, we'd run up and see Uncle Lee. Uncle Lee, we have this problem. And we'd sit down and tell us all about it. And most of the time, he didn't give us the answers we wanted to hear, believe me. And when we do something's out of thing, Dad would say, would your uncle approve of that? That was all there was to it. Uncle Lee was the man. And we're very, very fortunate to have had him. And when he started his foundation, really I didn't appreciate my uncle as much as I do now until after he's gone. When I started reading through his readings and his thoughts and how far ahead of himself he was, or how he could see into the future and what it was. I think all the efforts and charitable efforts in Fresno County was to help them succeed, just like this museum is right now. We want people to learn what this is all about, the zoo, the education, the schools, so whatever have you. They've all come to fruition. The area was good to us. There's no question about that. We succeeded in that area. The healthcare issues, I think my grandmother dying at a very early age in 1921, I think that was our insight to healthcare, because they tell me if Grandma had had a hysterectomy when she was, at that time, she was only 40 when she died, she would have lived a normal life. And today, her problems at that time are common today. So that's one thing, and I think that we didn't have any money. Wanting education as bad as what he wanted. My uncle was a very self-educated person. He would sit down and he studied. He knew more than most college profs know, I could tell you that. And him being denied an education was, I think, the foundation of his wanting an education for other people as much as he does. I love Fresno County. That's where I was born. Our family's been here for a long time. We've watched it grow. We're watching it grow, and I think that giving back to other people, we're very fortunate to be able to do these things, and we're doing it to give back to the people, and hopefully it's a good place for everybody to live in. Life at that time was very simple compared to what it is today. We didn't have any television at that time, or there were very few television sets. We didn't have any, the computers hadn't been invented. There was many things that had not been invented. The Fresno Fair at that time was a very big deal. It was a social gathering of the people in the area because that was the fair, something we looked forward to. We didn't have all these. I guess the most important thing was they had the horse races at the fair, and there was no gambling at that time, so it was a place to go gamble or watch the horses run. and it was a social activity for us as kids. We were able to intermingle with kids from other schools or other areas, which we didn't have at that time. It was a place for us to gather. It was quite a social place. And we had our animals at that time. That was, it taught us a lot. We learned a lot of hands-on skills when we were kids. And we'd bring them to the fair and show them to the fair and see all the other kids, you know. And it was kind of neat to wear your blue FFA jackets and your white showmanship outfits and bring your animals and groom them and all this and that and the other. It was really a big deal. I think in Fresno County at that time when we were brought up, everybody was equal. Everybody was on the same playing field. We didn't care who they were, what they were. We didn't care anything about anything other than we were all God's creations. That's all we were. We were all friends. We didn't know any differences. Nobody had any money. We just did things together. That was the way it was supposed to be.
Well, what makes me proud to call Fresno County my home, and has been my home since my family came here in the early 40s. And what really occurred here for me was seeing how marvelous the city of Fresno was, and of course the county of Fresno with all the different ethnic groups, because we're of course Armenian, and we assimilated, and we enjoyed everybody as one and the same. And that's why I stay here. I still marvel at how we have all assimilated and become one big family like we should be everywhere in the country, everywhere in the world. It's really a great time to reflect back on 1949 and what the city was like, because it was very uncomplicated. And all of us were at the various schools in the city, Winchell School, elementary school. The fair was some place where we could, on Kids Day, run out the front doors of the Winchell School and head to the fair with our dollar bill and enjoy each other's company no matter what side of the city we came from, because it was really simple. There wasn't anything complicated. There was a lot of diversity. Nobody looked at each other as being unequal. And we'd get here and enjoy the food, the rides on the Midway, and we played together. It was a happy time. Fresno was a happy time. And in some cases, it's still a happy place to be. And we're just working through problems that didn't exist when, we were youngsters. But that's evident everywhere, no matter where you go. Well, starting with cleaning stalls and riding mules and finding out that these animals were truly great athletes. I have to say, it became a passion for me and my family, and then I got addicted to thoroughbreds. And one horse in particular I saw out here at the Big Fresno Fair galloping one morning, and it was a pony horse. And I told my brother Artie, I said, this horse has some ability. And so I raised enough money, $1,000, which wasn't much, and we put the horse in training with the help of other people, trainers, who didn't charge me a lot of money, and we went on to win. I believe out of 7 starts, we won 6 races, and then shipped the horse to Santa Anita, and he ran second with really great horses, and he was purchased from me down there by Johnny Longden for Lorne Green for $10,000, and then that translated into getting into some horse partnerships with John Harris, who is obviously one of the best and most prominent breeders in the state of California. And from then on, it just became a great family affair. I have a small farm with about 20 horses in Coalinga, which we take care of horses. We'll rescue horses, but my horses are all started there with their breaking and training, and then we ship to our various trainers. The sport of racing to me is really all about having something in common with my family and my grandkids. I was telling the story recently about I wanted to go to the track, and my grandson, who is only 4 years old, he gets up and he looks at me and I said, Nico, what are you doing, buddy? And he goes, Papa, are we going to the racetrack today? I said, I think we are. He goes, I'll get my boots on. I said, okay, buddy, we'll head out just as soon as you're ready. And off we went, hand in hand. And my family, every year, still goes to Del Mar for most of the meet there. We try to win a race or 2 down there. And it's what we count down to do every summer. The minute we're done with the summer, we start counting down the weeks until we can go back every July and every August and first part of September. And it's all family affair and some friends. The challenges of running a business in Fresno County or in California, in all sincerity, have become fairly overwhelming to small business people. So you have to have the people around you, the supporting cast, which I've been blessed to have, that understands the regulations and the things that keep you successful. But I want to say that it's very complicated. We have a lot of things that we've had to adjust to. It's not comfortable to start a business now, and probably the biggest obstacle are the regulations. Giving back to the community dates back to about the middle 1980s when I heard of something called the Community Reinvestment Act. And I was vice chairman of the board of a bank, and we were asked to participate with a certain amount of our assets to invest in certain programs, and we did it, and we liked it, and then my company carried on, and we invest mostly in children's charities and trying to teach kids and give them a path to success through knowing there are opportunities everywhere if they just seek them. I've always coined this phrase, you can't look in the rearview mirror and go forward for very long. But we try to contribute to children's charities. As you know, we put on a golf tournament every year for the veterans, and we have done, I think, and our volunteers have done a great job with the Veterans Hospital, the Walk of Honor that's there now, the rehabilitation room there for our veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. It's beautiful, and we've done this in honor of the many boys that were killed, generally from the Clovis area, the Hubbard Barrow brothers. The Hubbard Barrow Golf Tournament is the name of our Veterans Day Golf Tournament, and we've been blessed to have people here like Colonel Oliver North to help us, and I enjoy the contributions we make to these nonprofits as much as anything I've ever done because I see value. And you cure the evils that we have. And I always say it through your children. Teach them good, and they'll teach good. Don't teach them bad things. Don't teach them racism. Don't teach them prejudice. And you can do that by taking them under their wing. The Big Fresno Fair is a good example of why I love it here. You come here, you see every ethnic group. You really do. They just get together. They share the experience of laughter and joy. It's just a terrific venue. I was saying to some friends just recently, no place anywhere in the state of California is as good as Fresno County, the Big Fresno Fair. Come and enjoy. What is there not to do here that is enjoyable? The Hubbard Barrow Golf Tournament began when a group of volunteers approached me when some of the kids from Buchanan, as many as 8, were killed in Iraq and Afghanistan. And 2 brothers, the Hubbard brothers, were killed from the same family. And these were classmates that said, would you help us do a golf tournament so that we will never forget what they sacrificed? And so we started the Hubbard Barrow Memorial Golf Tournament on Veterans Day, and we've been at it consistently every year for 11 or 12 years now. And the volunteers are the same, but now they are moms and dads and have children. The children come out. We have all of the various military groups at the golf tournament. The pre-ceremony is fantastic, a 21-gun salute. The pastor who talks about the sacrifices. So it began with our volunteers that were only 19 and 20 years old, ladies and gentlemen that were classmates. And they still are there to this day. And now we do a thing called the Bear Boot Camp on Memorial Day. And we have little kids crawling on the grass with their various little uniforms on. And it's in conjunction with the Buchanan Bears, because most of these kids were killed were Buchanan graduates. The Walk of Honor at the Veterans Hospital is a delight for me, and I encourage everybody, whether you're a veteran or you are just living and enjoying your life in Fresno, to go there to the Veterans Hospital, because out in front of the Veterans Hospital, there are terrific monuments to all of those World War II veterans with their names etched, and then the Korean Memorial with all of those that we could find, put their names in our way of thanking them for their service, and Vietnam, all of those that we lost, over 55,000, and then Iraq and Afghanistan. And you go through and see one of the most incredible, respectful tributes that we can pay to those sacrifices that were made by these marvelous men and women. And I encourage everybody to take a walk through that walk of honor. You know, the most rewarding nonprofit is probably the Hubbard Barrow Veterans Day Golf Tournament, because we not only raise funds for our veterans and the sacrifices they have made, but I see the community coming out in full force to join us at our golf tournament. And each year it's gotten bigger and bigger, and we have people join us from all over Fresno County. We have a waiting list to play in the tournament, but we invite everybody to come and enjoy the food and things, and we talk about and honor one veteran every year, no matter what era that he served in, and we talk about his sacrifices. And that is as absolutely emotional as anything can be, because those are true heroes, both men and women. if the world were to know Fresno County as we know it, I say this in all sincerity, this is a county that has every ethnic group living together, enjoying each other, respecting each other. There is so much family among all these groups together. And I just think that if the world could see how we exist, how we have come together, and the opportunities here that we create for one another, it's incredibly marvelous in every shape or form. I often think about all these surrounding cities in Fresno County: Clovis, Parlier, Reedley, Fresno, the great school systems we have in each individual city. Sanger just has been certified as one of the best in the country. And then you have universities. Not only Fresno State and Pacific University, Reedley's a university, Fresno Junior College, National University. It's right in front of us in Fresno County, all within 20 or 25 miles. You can do anything to achieve the success you want because the opportunity is here, and I wish the world could see it. Come here and enjoy and assimilate. I think the museum is probably as important an investment as anything we have ever done in Fresno County, because we give opportunities for maybe the schools, and I think they will do this, to have some field trips here with their children. Let them see it with their eyes. Let them see what this is all about. They will appreciate, they will respect. Many years ago, I opened the doors to a large supermarket that I was managing, and I brought kids on field trips just to go through our produce department and have our people show them the difference between lettuce, asparagus, rhubarb. And you know what, afterwards, there was a reward, a little bit of an ice cream. And we talked to these youngsters. And I thought to myself, I'm so happy doing this. I just can't think of anything I'd rather be doing than showing children all of what Fresno is all about, including our supermarket, the big Fresno Fair, the museum. This could be the gem of the Central Valley, the gem. I believe it is. And I think children should have a great opportunity in scheduling field trips through their schools to come and see what this is all about.
Great.
Center,
Cosmopolitan.
Opportunity.
Diverse.
Mecca.
Diversity.
Fantastic.
Home.
Diversity.
Great. Friendly.
Caring.